word? What's the word?
And just like that, we are back again. It's been a whole week, but you know what, Steve? We've talked about this before. The show's called The Bees of Boxing because we talk about the business of boxing. We talk about the boxing of boxing. We talk about the BS of boxing. And, we even talk about, I'm going to throw this new one out there for you, Steve, because what we saw this past weekend was absolutely the brilliance of boxing. I'm telling you, I was excited. I didn't even have to take a nap during the day to stay up that late. Shout out to my boy over at Flat Out Racing who did have to take a nap so he could stay up that late that night. Old timers. But listen, I want to know what you thought, first of all, of the card as a whole, and then because I got some specific questions I want to ask you. But as a whole, what did you think of this entire thing?
I haven't seen the whole card yet.
Okay.
I've seen the top of the card, and I mean, how many times are we ever going to say, well, those two matches were just stunners? However, are we going to? I mean, you're always going to say, well, okay, the main event was fantastic. The rest of the card was or some of that card was fantastic. Let's pick one from the middle of the card, and a co-main was good, but the main, well, I mean, the two fight. I mean, it's just extraordinary, and sometimes this happens, and when it does, it reminds you of why we love boxing so much, because when people come to fight and also come to box, not just fight, then that's the great thing. It's wonderful. Yeah.
Here's the one thing that it's kind of a shame, because you talk about the three fights that were at the top of the card. You talk about your feature bout between Cruz and Ferreira. Then you talk about your co-main with Stephen Fulton, right? And then you talk about your main event. The thing is that Stephen Fulton kind of gets lost in the mix, kind of gets overshadowed because the two fights around him were unbelievable. Now let's talk about this feature bout first between Cruz and Ferreira. Oh my word. If I had two words that could sum up this fight, and I want to know what your two words would be, Steve, but if my two words would be Mexican boxing. That's it.
I'd probably use fighters fighting, because, the Pitbull, I mean, we didn't expect a blowout, did we? But we didn't expect that he would have such a tough time. We didn't expect that he would have such a tough time. We didn't expect that he would, that anyone would meet him in the middle of the ring and say, you know what, I'm just gonna bang with you. And we didn't expect that would have some success. I mean, with Cruz, Mike Tyson has said recently, he is the fighter that most at the moment reminds me of me. So, you've got all that going on, and he comes to the ring in the Pitbull mask and all of that. And some fighters might think, I'm really not, it could be a Frank Bruno situation where he's crossing himself as he comes to the ring and all of that. But that didn't happen. And I thought that Cruz looked tired later on. Didn't half think he looked tired.
Well, listen, here's the thing. I don't think that anybody, including Cruz, thought that Angel Ferreira was going to come out there and put it on Cruz the way that he did. Everybody expected Pitbull. This was going to be his fight back. You know what I mean? After his loss, right? This was going to be his big fight back to set up what was taken away from him. Because what was taken away from him was a big fight that they thought apparently was in their camp and done. And we talked about this before, right? Where it looks like there was going to be a card set up in May. and you were going to get to see Isaac Cruz against Ryan Garcia. And we were like salivating at this one because fantastic. I don't like that fight for Cruz if it was to happen. I understand why he would take it. I don't like that fight for Cruz because you got to remember, here's the thing, in my opinion, Garcia would be the A side, right, on this, which means that there would be no clauses as far as like water rehydration clauses like Garcia had with Gervonta Davis, right? Gervonta Davis is a lot closer to that size for a Pitbull Cruz, which is the fight that Pitbull Cruz should be going after. Let's avenge that loss. Let's avenge that loss with Gervonta Davis. Gervonta Davis has his fight coming up. Cool, we can get that done. But apparently the bigger problem was that Garcia, they wanted this fight to happen in May, knowing that Cruz already had this fight here, and Cruz was like, I'll take the fight, no problem. But there wasn't any kind of turnaround. You know what I mean? There wasn't enough time to prepare for this. And when you're preparing for this against a much bigger guy, like Cruz is he's a pit bull. There's a reason they did that. Garcia, if you see the two of them together, you realize how big of a dude Garcia really is. You know what I mean? So what is Garcia? What is Cruz? 5'4", right?
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Do you think that is a fight that Garcia kind of talked himself out of? Because it looks like Garcia is going to be fighting Rolly Romero now.
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about this earlier. It's not as exciting a fight for me, that really, to be honest. Garcia is, if he's talked himself out of it, then he's foolish, because Cruz is exactly the fighter he wants. Brings the fireworks, stands in front of you. Now, what I'm saying as a curmudgeon is, and I love the fight, what I'm saying is, if someone's standing in front of you and that's your real game, and you get people out of there, and you couldn't get Angel out of there, and he stood and fought with you, which was a foolish thing to do, and actually you didn't get him out of there, and it's closer than we thought, then if you've got someone who will bang with you, but actually has some silky skills as well, you're nowhere. And I suspect that what we'll get is, and I've had a lot of slings and arrows, but when I say that Tyson was fairly one-dimensional for me, however, it was a wonderful dimension. I feel that same way about Cruz, and I think we were shown last night that he can stand and bang, but if he can't get an hell out of there, who showed fantastic, courage, then what's he going to do against a fighter who can really box and slip and all of that?
Right. Well, see, listen, here's the one thing that I noticed with all of this last night is that there was a consistency, and the consistency wasn't good with the fights themselves. The fights themselves were fantastic. Where it all seems to fall apart, and we've brought this up multiple times, is the scorecards. And now, before we get into all of that, I want to talk very briefly about the main event, because the main event, you know what? Fuck it. Let's talk about Stephen Fulton first, because Stephen Fulton came out here with these like hillbilly shorts on and these Timberlands that look like, his boxing shoes were Timberlands with the laces and everything, and came out and looked fantastic. Shout out to the camp over, Boots Ennis camp and Stephen Fulton and Old Man Ennis and stuff like that. Shout out Philadelphia. Let's go Birds. Okay, this main event, David Morrell, David Benavidez. Everybody, there was so much heat going into this thing, right? The hatred. You even saw it the beginning of the fight. David Benavidez didn't want to touch gloves, right? But David Benavidez did what he does, and he just puts on such a weird amount of pressure for a guy who looks like him, shaped like him, boxes like him. You don't expect this from a David Benavidez, from him. And David Morrell, in my opinion, just didn't get going early enough in this fight. He waited till the end, whereas he should have been banking some of these rounds. What did you see with this fight, first of all?
I thought that they both came to fight, and that's really, it's a simple thing to say, isn't it? Oh, yeah, everyone comes to fight. No, they don't generally. And, that's a frustration sometimes. They both came to fight. I thought that Again, I was surprised at Morrell. I didn't think it would be a blowout, but I thought that Benavidez would have an easier night. I thought that Morrell I mean, they banged from the beginning, didn't they? You've got a lot of phone box stuff going on here, and and Benavidez worked the body as he does, and power punches, and the sheer volume of punches with him. At some point, you think you look at the CompuBox, and I was saying on commentary, but when they told me the CompuBox figures, I thought, I didn't see that, but that's extraordinary. So to ship that much punishment, to come back, to get a knockdown, okay, he was off balance, but to get a knockdown or a touchdown, should I say, in that 11th round, I mean, kudos all day to Morrell. But
let's talk about that knockdown for a second, because I had a problem with what came right after that knockdown, which was the end of the round, and we saw not just one fighter throwing a shot after the bell. David Benavidez threw inside of that flurry, threw that first shot after the bell. Morrell threw a retaliatory shot, in my opinion, and that is what really got him penalized. But let's call it what it is. I mean, both guys should have been at least reprimanded in that situation. This was a very clear bang. We got a way to get rid of this point right now.
Yeah, I mean, let's call it what it is. Bullshit, because it really was. I mean, yes, Benavidez threw a punch, and I understand from the referee's point of view that Morrell's shot was cleaner. Morrell's shot was an overhand right, I think it was, which was cleaner. So, he saw that and perhaps didn't, because he was in the middle of it, he perhaps didn't see as well the Benavidez shot. But we've seen this happen countless times, and very seldom, if ever, have I seen that's a point. And it must have broken Morrell's will to have said, I've tried my best. This should be a 10-8 round for me. And that's now gone. So it was, I mean, and it wasn't as if there was intent to it. They were both fighting. It was a flurry. And it's not as if the bell rung and he tapped him on the back and smacked him one. That's different. They were fighting.
I do think Morrell's punch was a little bit more deliberate. And I think it was deliberate because Morrell knew the bell had rang, and then he got punched in the face by Benavidez and was like, MFer, boom, and popped him one back. Because I watched it back a couple of times before I made this statement on it, and I believe that's exactly what happened. He was like, "What, we're doing this?" Because there was this tension throughout the entire fight. And you talk about that round, and you talk about how it can deflate a guy. When you looked at the scores of this fight altogether, like there was judges that gave this thing 108. 118 to 108, which means that you're telling me David Morrell did not win one round in this fight, is what you're telling me. I don't know if he won more than a handful of rounds. I could probably count the rounds that he probably won with still having fingers left over. But to say that he won nothing out of that fight after you clearly, did you go pee during the second round? You know what I mean? I don't know what happened here, right? At least some of the other judges, it was 115 to 111 for the other judges, which I can understand. I find that to be respectful. Cool, no problem. This is my question for you. And seeing how the timing was on that shot at the bell, seeing the knockdown sometimes ruled as a slip, sometimes a slip ruled as a knockdown in boxing, seeing scores like this, can we say that we need to involve AI judging more than ever now? Give me your argument.
Oh, it's so. We talked about this earlier, didn't we? I just thought, it's so hard. I mean, the thing is that boxing is a mano a mano, person to person, flesh to flesh game, isn't it? With vicissitudes and all sorts of situations. If we're talking about boxing counts and all of that, then absolutely Those animal spirits should be caged, and we should have simply AI judging. That would solve a lot of issues. But then part of the beauty of boxing is what we're talking about now, which is that was terrible. How could they do this, etc., etc.? It was stolen from him, and then we talk and talk. And part of the beauty of the business of boxing and the boxing of boxing too is that these are humans. And with the AI stuff, it's very trendy at the moment, isn't it? With the AI stuff, I kind of feel that you take some of the humanity out of it, obviously. Maybe one judge should be AI, but then it throws the other judges. Oh, that one looks. Maybe there should be some kind of experiment, the AI experiment, and maybe we should have that, and then see what they say, and say, well, actually, it's closer to the human judges. I really don't know.
What if because you couldn't just go to having the 3 human judges that you have and another judge be an AI judge that is, because they tried this a couple of fights ago in Riyadh, if I'm not mistaken. What if they did this though, Steve? What if you had 3 real judges, 2 AI judges? Now let's find out if these 2 AI judges are actually on board and if this is being scored appropriately, or if one AI judge from one side of the ring or the cage or whatever it is scores differently than an AI judge looking at it from a different angle. Because I think here's the thing that you were talking about when you talk about the humanity of it and stuff is you're talking about a trained eye being able to see this. You're talking about hearing the sound of the shot, seeing the cleanliness of it, not just the motion and the whatever the mechanics of the shot, right? I think that is what, if you take that away from combat sports, then you're looking at a different kind of world.
You are, but then who cares about the A side and the B side then? There is no impetus for that. Because really, if you're the A side fighter and you've got judges and you're bringing a load of people here, you're probably thinking, if it goes to the cards, then they'll have been hearing just all of my punches in here and the other guy, nothing. So that's the A side, isn't it? So, you kind of, that's part of the impetus of promoting and managing and bringing people in and bringing people on. And if you're saying, well, this is a very sterile situation now, then the A side and the B side disappears completely. Where is boxing then?
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, because it's been this way for so long that it's hard to look at change. And we know how we are as humans to look at change sometimes. I just wonder, like, how many times are we going to hear the stories of judges looking at fights in completely different than the way that the fight actually went, right? And at what age do we stop letting people judge fights? Because, I mean, listen, if we're testing people to drive a car, because some of these fights are literal car crashes, if you ask me, and we're asking them to judge that. We're asking them to mark stuff down and try to remember what you saw at the beginning of the round as opposed to what you saw at the end of the round or what you saw in the middle of the round. I think there's a lot more nuances to it. And I think that maybe that's something where AI can take over and kind of get the mechanics of it. They've got it with CompuBox, right? With the amount of shots. But what did those shots really do? Right? I think that's where we do it. What do you think?
Yeah, and I can't remember how often judges have to have their licenses or whatever they have, piece of paper, how often they have to take tests and exams. I don't know how often that is. It needs to be stringent. It needs to be every couple of years or something like that. And there needs to be a cutoff. I don't want to be ageist about this, but there probably needs to be a cutoff. With AI, perhaps what you can do is say, it's like VAR in football, isn't it? Well, that seems a bit odd. It seems a bit odd, and generally we thought that there should be some kind of chief judge or somebody outside of this who says, well, I thought Benavidez won really handily. And actually, it looks like Morrell's got. So let's go to the AI judges and see what they say.
Well, some of the times what you don't see is you see some of the other judging, like in between rounds, you can kind of hear it sometimes. And if you've been at these events or you know anything about the inner circle, some of you out there will know that you'll get the referee will come over in between rounds and say things to to somebody on the outside. I've got a headbutt in here, incidental, didn't cause a cut. That's telling them that if they see something later on, okay, it's more of an impactful thing because of the nuances of judging. Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes maybe humans miss that.
Yeah, you also get referees who very close to the judges will go over to a fighter after a difficult round and say, "You okay? You want to carry on? You okay? Are you all right?" That's going to affect a judge as well. I go, "Oh, it looks like he's really shipping a lot of punishment here."
Yeah.
It's difficult, but that's part of the beauty, surely, of the humanity of it. I'm a humanist. I want with your robot love of robots, Chris, with your robotic love. I mean, Asimov's got nothing on you. I want to celebrate life and all its beauty.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate the throwback to Isaac talk. All right. Don't think I don't know science fiction, my friend. All right. He's a lot better than that guy that started Scientology, anyways, if we're talking science fiction writers. But that's a different show and a different time altogether. I think the biggest thing that AI could do, or some kind of replay judging could do, is alleviate what we saw in this Morrell and Benavidez fight, where we saw at the end of the round, where we saw a punch thrown by Benavidez, then a punch thrown by Morrell, and Morrell gets punished for it. Whereas in a situation like that, you could go back to replay. Boom. Well, punches were thrown on both sides. Okay, now we pull them together. And we're like, guys, smarten up. But to take that point away in that situation, I mean, it could have an effect. If that fight wasn't a blowout the way that it was, it could have a bigger effect on it. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
Yeah.
So
it has a place. It has to have a place. I just don't know where yet.
100%. Well, listen, wherever that place is, just remember we called it. All right. Steve, as always, it's a pleasure to sit down and talk with you before, after, during, always about boxing. Check you out, World Weary Guy 1, all over the place. Are you sneaking into the other platforms? We got some news coming up for you pretty soon. You're going to be maybe seeing a little bit more of you around here. I don't know. I'm just saying. And listen, more Steve is always wonderful amounts of Steve for me. Thank you very much, my friend. As always, in the world of boxing, in the world of combat sports, one thing you got to remember, Steve, get used to it. Got to tuck that chin, my friend.